What the left has done is to capture language. Human rights sound lovely. They're wonderful. Of course they are. But they've changed their meaning. The human rights that Churchill, that Eleanor Roosevelt was interested in, were the human rights of every individual against the state. The original conventions were designed to stop Nazism, to stop communism. What happened instead is, through the influence of judges and through, above all, in the United Nations, the actual influence of Stalinism, you stand them on their head. Because human rights, and Lord Bingham actually says this absolutely explicitly in the 1990s, the real purpose of human rights is to protect minorities. Now, the moment you do that, you reverse, because the only way you can protect... Remember, there's a very simple definition of democracy. It's the rule of the majority. So you use human rights deliberately to destroy the democratic majority. That's exactly what the Human Rights Act does. It prioritizes minorities. So you produce this entire inversion, which of course woke does. Woke sees, as it were, you, me, all of us, one way or another, white men, allegedly the ruling majority, as the wicked who've got to be suppressed. So it's the Magnificat. He shall put down the mighty from their seats and exalt them of low degree. And but it goes much further than that. If you believe in universal or European human rights, it means you don't actually believe in the state, because you've got a source of law outside the state. You remove the notion, which was absolutely central to England, that what gives law... People always say, why do the English, as it were, dot I's and cross T's with laws? Why did we always gold plate European legal interventions and regulations? Well, the idea is that in England, law was seen as something you made yourself. In other words, Parliament binds everybody because everybody is represented there. Continental Europe, everywhere had been an absolute monarchy. So law was something that was put on you, which is why there's a much more relaxed attitude to law. And in Ireland, Italy, a positive opposition to law. That it's seen as an external oppressive thing. And then the even worse thing that universal human rights do is to say there should be no state frontiers. Because if there are universal human rights, going back to the point of immigration, it must mean we're all the same. It must mean there's a universal human being. That, this absurd business, if you remember the young man of Rwandan origins who was born in Wales, who committed those hideous murders in Southport, there were people saying, oh, he's Welsh. Just jaw-dropping. This notion that the mere fact of being second generation born here, or first generation to be born here, means somehow you're as British or as Welsh as English as the rest of it. But if you believe in a universal human being, this is why we have an entire apparatus now that believes fundamentally, and the Labour Party really subscribes to this, it's lying at the moment, that there shouldn't be frontiers. That there should be, I mean, this is the logic of what they're doing. There should be a universal citizenship. In other words, what I think we've got to get into our heads is that unlimited immigration is the final expression of globalism. It's the idea that we are all the same and should be the same, and nations and identities and values are mere parochial eccentricities which will be swept away in the great sweep of history. So that was the incorporation of the European Convention on Human Rights. And then, of course, you had the independence of the Bank of England, although in some ways looked quite a good thing. It's the first of the fact you deliberately create a whole set of bodies which removes as much power from Parliament as possible. So Parliament and ministers don't set interest rates. They now don't control the budget because the Tories were stupid enough to create the Office of Budget Responsibility. We don't control this Gadarene rush to net zero because of the Climate Change Committee. There's the Immigration Advisory Committee, whose essential remit is to say more. English nature, which prioritizes newts over human beings. all this nonsense with this world of quangocracy, which is new labour to a man and especially to a rampant woman. And then there's a second wave of all of this, which is responsible for, again, Lord Bingham, the man who said the purpose of human rights is to protect minorities, the creation of the Supreme Court. It's a catastrophe because you introduce a natural and an inevitable tension and a contradiction in our constitution between a sovereign parliament and a Supreme Court. The two of them are bound to fight each other, as happened most obviously with the absurd with the absurd nonsense of Miller 1, or was it Miller 2? I forget which, and the whole matter of the prorogation of Parliament being ruled illegal, inconceivable, directly against the Bill of Rights, which tries to separate legislative and jurisdictional matters. And then finally, and most catastrophically, the Equality Act. Again, it sounds lovely. But what it does, it prioritizes minorities. It does something else, which I didn't even realize until recently. You will be familiar with the idea that labor has got an intrinsic value, the Marxist theory, a Marxist labor theory of value. In other words, that the value of labor is not determined by the market, but by some sort of intrinsic thing. Mm-hmm. It's mad. It's economically deranged, and it's been known to be so since Adam Smith, one of the great classical passages in The Wealth of Nations. The Equalities Act has 3 insane equations which writes the Marxist theory of value into English law, gives judges the right to determine whether women or men are properly paid, so that implies a non-market evaluation, and is the reason that we've driven Birmingham into bankruptcy and we're about to drive Next into bankruptcy. I mean, the sheer insanity of this stuff. Harriet Harman's Great Tribute Act. So what we've done, we've created a structure of government which manifestly is vastly expensive. Secondly, does not work. It's why we can't build anything. It's why the costs of construction in this country are between, I think it's 5 to 50 times the European average. It's why nothing works, because nothing can be corrected. It's why every time you try to do anything, there is a lawsuit. It's why you can't remove immigrants. You can't stop immigrants. So what we've done is to create a deliberately, well, it wasn't done deliberately, but we've created an absolutely malfunctioning structure of government, which is the quintessence of it is Keir Starmer. Starmer is at the heart of this process. He believes in rules. Do you remember, coming back quickly from all these grand statements, do you remember when the first business of Starmer and freebies comes up? What is the thing he says? Oh, I obeyed the rules. He's the kind of man who thinks that the rules replace the innate perception of right and wrong. This is the terrible world we've created, in which we've replaced those vital things like prudence, judgment, wisdom, which are not reducible to simple little rules, but to everything that is written down minutely. I mean, Grenfell, the terrible disaster there, we have a set of building regulations, which is about 3 times the length of the Bible. And yet that still happened. And it's a tax code, which again has expanded to lunatic size everywhere you look. So we're like Gulliver, in that Gulliver in Lilliput. We're an extraordinary creative people because we're mad and eccentric, and 3 of us around here are pretty good examples of that. But there is, which is why things happen. That's what's fruitful. All creation depends on heresy. It depends on dissent. And what we're doing, we're tying it down, we're dampening it, we're sitting on it with this awful structure